stages and then 2 turn up at once.
We should have got the next one through the door then, to complete that joke.
Yes. Just a general update about how negotiations are going on. And if we do need to, we will. And
How does he know my name? Silly.
Okay, it's 11 o'clock, folks. So first of all, thank you all for coming. So the first item is apologies for absence. First item is apologies for absence. Councillor Alden has given me apologies for lateness, but he is attending. Do we have any other apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Chowdhury and Councillor Hyatt, and we have Councillor Akhtar and Councillor Clements on Teams.
Okay, so welcome everyone, welcome those on Teams. That does mean once Councillor Alden comes, we will have 13 members, and as you know, we need 14 to be quorum. Does anyone know of anyone who is running late who haven't given their apologies? No. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Item 2: declarations of interest. Does anyone have any declarations of interest that they would like to make this ONS committee aware of? No? Okay. Excellent. Right. 3: chair's remarks. I've got several chair's remarks in 5 items, so take them in no particular order except in particular order, because first and foremost, I believe it's Kate's last meeting because she's off to West Yorkshire. West Yorkshire's game is our considerable loss, Kate. Can we thank you as a committee for all your hard work over the numerous years you've been assisting in both this committee and the Transport Delivery Committee, and we wish you every success in the next future in West Yorkshire. Thank you very much indeed, Kate. And you hopefully won't have to suffer someone else's bad jokes and comments in West Yorkshire. I don't know if anyone else would like to say anything, like on the opposition side.
We're not the opposition, Chair, we're the controlling group.
On the Labour side.
That's better. Chair, can I just say congratulations to Kate for the work she's done and the way that she does her work. I'm sure Pervez would agree with me as the member closely associated with working with her. It is a great loss to the authority and it's Yorkshire's gain, but hey ho, let's not impede anybody's career prospects. Congratulations.
Indeed, Kate, if you could get the third promotion, which would involve you coming back here,
That's a good idea.
that would be really, really welcome. Okay. I want to draw members' attention to the next meeting, which unusually is on a Tuesday. This is item agenda 16. We will get there eventually. But the reason it is on a Tuesday is that given the critical nature of the board on the 9th, on Friday the 9th of May, in terms of the next stage of bus franchising and the decision, I believed it was so important for us to see the papers before that meeting. The Monday is obviously the bank holiday, so we can't meet on the bank holiday. We have to meet, obviously, when the papers are available and in the public domain. So this is why I've asked for the next meeting to be on the 6th of May, so we can actually see the papers, comment, make our views known as an ONS committee, so that we are fully conversant before the decision is made at all. So I hope that's okay with everyone. Okay, the next thing I would like to say is, since the last meeting, we've had several visits. There was a committee visit to the package 2 railway stations at Paisley Village, King's Heath and Pineapple Road. I thought that was very well organised and very successful. So my thanks goes to Tom for all the work that he actually did there. We've also had a visit to the Perry Bar bus depot. I really was looking forward to coming along, but then I was involved in a city council meeting in Birmingham on the future of Birmingham libraries, which meant I couldn't attend. But I hear it all went very, very well. So again, thank you to the bus team in particular for everything they did in terms of the organisation, and of course underpinning everything, Lindsay and the governance team. I've asked for comments and feedback about that at the end of these brief announcements. You asked me to send a letter to the Mayor on various issues. One thing in particular was the getting the Active Travel Commissioner and the Road Safety Commissioner to TDOSC or briefing sessions. That has been agreed. Ideally, I would have liked to see them together because there's so many synergies between the two. We weren't able to make that happen, but I'm very pleased to say that Matt MacDonald, the Road Safety Commissioner, will be joining us at 1:30 today in terms of the briefing, both on the safe travel strategy and on the road safety safe system workshop. So please do stick around for that briefing, and if you haven't met him already, to meet our new Road Safety Commissioner. He's very active, he wants to get very involved, hands-on. I've met with him on a site visit already, and I think he's going to be a tremendous asset to the West Midlands Combined Authority and all the committees of the Combined Authority in terms of the road safety agenda. And we will schedule a meeting with Becky Martin, who's the Active Travel Commissioner, as soon as diaries permit. The final Chair's remarks, I want to call in Rachel in terms of a very quick update on the bus consultation, the bus franchising consultation, which is due to finish on the 30th of March, I believe, Rachel. Just to give this committee an update regarding that, and then I'll just do a wash up at the end. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. So I think, as you are all aware, I presented at the previous meeting on the bus franchising consultation that runs from the 6th of January to the 30th of March. So we are in the final few weeks of the consultation now. We've currently got over 3,000 online responses and a number of paper and community responses that we're just tallying up at the moment. So we are expecting over the next few weeks for there to be an incline in that as well. We tend to see at the beginning and the end of a consultation is where we have the majority of our responses. So we're still waiting on a number of statutory responses as well. So we are expecting there to be quite a significant increase over the next few weeks. From an engagement perspective, we carried out all councillor briefings in Sandwell, Coventry and Birmingham, and attended all scrutiny committees. We've just got one left, which is in Wolverhampton. And I think the ones where we haven't done all councillor briefings, the scrutiny meetings have been opened up to all councillors, and we've seen some really great attendance, questions, and being able to speak to members about the plans and the consultation. Events-wise, we've still got a number of events that are due to take place. We've got a public webinar online that happens this week. We've got a number of pop-ups in hospitals, so Russell Falls tomorrow, Heartlands Hospital on the 19th, and I know that was a request from TDOS previously, that we work with some of our regional hospitals to make sure that we are available and that patients and staff are able to respond to the consultation. So we've been able to get a number of those in across the consultation period, and we have a number of pop-up events still to take place across Dudley and Birmingham. We've also got the team out at all of the regional bus stations still over the next few weeks, speaking to passengers and giving them a chance to ask questions, but also directing them to where they can respond to the consultation. We have focus groups and peer-to-peer research that's also still taking place over the next few weeks. So just from ourselves, if you haven't had a chance to respond to the consultation yet, we'd much appreciate it if you are able to respond. If you need any support on where to find that, then happy to resend and recirculate all of those details. And also, I know a number of the members have been supporting the promotion of the consultation. So anything else that you can do to continue to promote that to your constituents over the next few weeks would be really appreciated too. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Rachel. Councillor Locke.
Could you resend the events so we can remind our residents and group, the community groups?
Okay, Rachel?
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Archer.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for calling Rachel, and thanks for the update, Rachel. Because I was wondering where I was going to raise this on the agenda. I was going to do it under matters arising, because I've got concerns about the bus reform and the consultation. As part of the consultation, as Rachel says, they're going out to all the constituent authorities, and as part of that, Pete and others, Rachel and others, gave a presentation to Dudley Council a couple of weeks ago to the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee, of which I'm a member. I think it's true to say, and Pete, I suspect, will agree, that the council leader and others gave you a tough time. Councillor Harley questioned the numbers, the council leader is, saying they didn't stack up and the franchise model could not be supported unless they were presented numbers that did convince. He also said he wasn't the only council leader who felt that way. So I'd appreciate some comments when I finish making the point and asking the question. He also said he felt the consultation wasn't ambitious enough in the aim to reach 2000. So it's a simple question, really. Where are we in terms of, and what's your feeling in terms of the feedback so far from other council leaders?
Before I call Pete to answer that question directly, as I said in my remarks, that we will see the board papers at our May meeting in advance of the board papers. So hopefully that issue and related issues will have been clarified for benefit, because that's also an issue of concern for Pete. Just a very brief response to that one, please.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Archer. Just in terms of follow-up, since you asked for a brief overview, actually there's been some really positive engagement all around the region, so it's been good to get the level of engagement from members across the region. With regards to the particular points that were raised at Dudley, then what we have undertaken is we've since had follow-up discussions with the leader, but also with the officers, because there were officer points that were raised where we had felt that those officers had been part and parcel of discussions prior to. We have further communications and officer discussions today, and we will be writing back formally to the Scrutiny Committee with clear and full answers to all of the points that were raised by them during the timescale of the consultation process. And of course, you did mention other authorities. We still have one other authority yet to go through the Scrutiny Committee process. That's from my point of view. I know, and you've also been in conversation if you wanted to flag it.
We've also been, I've since met with Councillor Harley on Friday as well, and gone through the multiple questions that he raised. There's obviously due diligence that is happening anyway on the finances, which I think is where a lot of the points, and yes, other councils are asking similar questions. There's work being undertaken by finance directors in terms of doing that due diligence as well, which will set out a very clear plan around the transition costs and then what are the other costs around fleet and depots, which is where I think most of the points arose as well, and that will be gone through and ahead of any decision in terms of franchising as well. But there's support from our finance directors is there as well to make sure that every local authority has full information about what this means.
Okay, Councillor Nickus, but before I call you in, you are now called thanks to Councillor events. So thank you very much.
Excellent news.
Apologies for lateness, I was at the Commonwealth Day event.
She had a presentation, and I think it's fair to say it went well. But he did raise a number of questions. And I presume, Chair, that at our meeting on May the 5th? 6th? No, the month, or whenever it is. May the 6th, yes. We will be able to clarify how we go forward. And the reason I put it in this context, what became clear in the Coventry meeting, is that currently we deliver or we offer through NX 240 million passenger journeys. Franchising means 100 figures based on 160 million journeys, which raises the questions, why the difference? And it turns out we've got a £50 million funding gap, which will need to be found by the authority to deliver the current service, let alone an improvement. So I understand the concerns being raised, but we do need to have that clarity as to how we improve the service, particularly when the Mayor had put great store behind supporting franchising. So I hope those questions will be clarified on our meeting on May the 6th.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholas. I share your hopes as well, because unless they are clarified, then I can't see how the board could actually make a decision on Friday the 9th without that clarification, because this is so critical for bus journeys across the whole of the West Midlands, from Wolverhampton through to Coventry. So I don't want this item to go into a formal agenda item, because we do have that formal agenda, but I would just ask Pete and Anne in particular, I think, that all the questions from both Councillor Archer and Councillor Nicholas will be clarified in the report that we will see at our May meeting.
The simple response is yes. The information on franchising as opposed to a deregulated market will be given ahead of the May board decision, and of course that will come through to scrutiny on the date, whichever date that is, so that you've got full visibility of that.
And I would hope that both questions asked by members of this committee are fed through that consultation process, given we're in this consultation process at the moment as well. Yes, Councillor Kay.
Thank you, Chair, for organising the National Express visit, and I would like to compliment the Vice Chairman on expert handling of the simulator, the bus driving simulator. I spoke to one of the National Express employees that she cautioned me that she felt that the bus franchising was going to cost a considerable amount more than we're currently allowing for, and referred me to the £140 million budget currently being run by Manchester. We're already burning cash on the audit report and the consultation. I would like a great deal more clarity on the total cost of this project before we commit further funding to it. We also saw the considerable fleet of electric buses, and I asked the person whether they were using the night rate electricity to charge them. But I was told that in fact they're not connected to mains electricity, and they're using diesel generators to charge the buses. Now, I'm prepared to accept that diesel generators are probably more efficient than using diesel engines in buses, but I think this is a far away from a green form of transport that we've been led to understand. And certainly when we're thinking about the depots, we need to ensure that there are large bore electricity cables available for charging the buses of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kay. I'm not going to propose your answer, Councillor Kay, now. The first part, again, could be fed back into the consultation process, so there is additional clarity. And the second point, could a response be sent about the charging of the electric buses to Councillor Kay? Do other members of the committee want to be copied into that? Yes, if you could copy in the committee into that, that would be very useful. Thank you, Pete. Right. No one else has indicated to speak. The only other chair's remark I want to say is that we have a further visit next Monday, I believe, Tom, to the Wednesbury Metro Depot. Are there still places on it?
I would have to defer to colleagues in Metro. Chris Hopkinson is organising that one. I believe it's the 18th of
18th,
March.
is it? Okay.
Sorry, no, apologies, you're right, it is the 17th. I was getting myself conflicted with another meeting there. I suspect there are still places available, but I'd need to defer to Chris. I have dropped him a message to ask, because I know well, at least one person in the room has expressed an interest about joining that particular trip.
Yes, so if you haven't expressed your interest already and do want to go to the Wednesbury depot, because I'm very keen that as a committee we undertake more of these visits and actually see on the ground what is happening ourselves as a committee, then please do speak to the officers and indicate your desired aspiration to attend.
Sorry, Chair, what time is this visit?
Tom, have you still got your diary up?
I do indeed, yes. 10 till 12 on Monday, 17th of March.
Okay, 10 in the morning to 12 on Monday, 17th of March. Okay.
Yeah, can I just send you my apologies? Next week it's the Wolverhampton Kabaddi, so at the open ceremony, so I'll be at the Wolverhampton Kabaddi.
Councillor Lambert.
My apologies too, I've got a medical appointment.
Okay, thank you for that. Right, okay, there's no other questions, then thank you very much indeed, Rachel. I'll move on to item 4, which is minutes. So 4A, minutes of the 13th of Jan. In terms of actuality, does anyone have anything to say regarding the minutes? No, good. Right, any matters arising from those minutes? No, good. 4B, action tracker. Anything anyone wants to comment with regard to the action tracker? As I said, the work that I believe you've asked me to do as chair of this committee, I have done and circulated responses where I've had them. So there's nothing else. Fine, excellent. Then we go on to item 5, which is the minutes of the joint O and S mayoral Q&A. Again, does anyone have anything to say about the actual accuracy of these minutes? No, good, or matters arising from these minutes? No, good. Right, then we move on to item 6, presentation on the Combined Authorities Air Quality Sensor Network and website. And Jake is going to be presenting. Jake, thank you.
Thank you. I'll just say a few quick words as an introduction to William from the Air Quality League from Combined Authority and Green Edge from the Policy Strategy and Innovation team at Transport for West Midlands. On the 29th of January, the Air Quality Congestion and Environmental Impact Lab had a presentation from Ellen Flynn on the new Combined Authorities Air Quality Sensor Network in Lakeside. This is up and running from February, and it's a sort of key part of the regional air quality framework that's approved by the Combined Authority in 2023. And the MEG felt that it was really interesting and useful thought-provoking presentation to see this new sensor network up and running. So thought it was useful to bring to TDOS. So on that note, I'll hand over to.
Before you do, Jake, I just wondered if the MEG champion, which I think is Councillor Ward, would like to say anything on this particular issue as it's your MEG?
Thank you. I think Jake has adequately explained. We just felt that this, because it's so new, it's only been up and running since the end of January, that this would be of interest to all members of this this committee. And as you'll see, it is a very interesting presentation, and there is some very good work going on around air quality monitoring across the West Midlands.
And thank you for all your work you do as the MEG champion, Councillor Ward. Okay, over to the presentation then.
Thank you for having us today. So yeah, as Jake's mentioned, I'm going to go over the new air quality website and the sensor network, which was live from the end of January this year. So the WMCA board approved the development of an air quality framework following requests as to what the CA was doing to address air quality. So historically, all statutory requirements have sat with local authorities. So subsequent work and delivery to improve air quality across the region has been done at a local level. The air quality framework, which was adopted in November 23, complements those air quality action plans currently led by the local authorities and consists of 45 options which we could implement across the region to improve air quality outcomes across the region. And it was developed in partnership with all of our local authorities and wider stakeholders such as the Environment Agency. We also have an air quality implementation plan which sets out our priorities for 24 to 26. In addition to this, in March 23, we were awarded funding from both DEFRA and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to deliver a region-wide air quality sensor network, focus on particulate matter pollution, the development of a website and data platform, the delivery of 7 behaviour change trials and an air quality literacy training programme, which is available to councillors and officers within both the CA and the local authorities, and a West Midlands communications toolkit to help gain consistency in air quality messaging of the region. So the sensor network, the aim of this was to provide greater geospatial coverage of air pollutants across the region, especially particulate matter, and provide regional stakeholders, primarily the public, access to real-time monitoring data. We focused on particulate matter as historically we've focused on nitrogen dioxide coming from transport emissions, so we've got a good understanding of what NO2 is like across the region. However, particulate matter, we have limited monitoring, so we don't have a good understanding of the emission sources and the impact it's having on our communities. We've now got 90 sensors located across the region, and it's the second largest regional network after London, which is maintained by the Greater London Authority. We identified sensor locations with the 7 local authorities to make sure that the sensors also worked for their needs as well as WMCA. So we focused on high areas of particulate matter pollution, utilising the University of Birmingham's model data. We focused on areas of high personal exposure, especially where we find those most vulnerable. So that's schools, hospitals, etc. As we know, those people are impacted most by the implications of health exposure, implications of air pollution, sorry. And the indices of multiple deprivation. We know that from research done by the University of Birmingham that lower socioeconomic areas tend to be those most impacted by the highest levels of pollution. And we're hoping that this data will help us reduce that disparity. We also, with the census supply, developed an automated quality control and assurance process to ensure that the data that we are publishing and making accessible to the public is reliable and valid and can be trusted. These sensors are now live and they can be found on our air quality website and data platform, which was launched at the end of January. So not only does it provide sensor data, but it's also a regional hub for air quality information and what air quality is in a regional context, what people can do to reduce their exposure, as well as how they can reduce concentrations across the region. And partly the reason for doing this was to make sure we've got consistency in messaging across the region. Historically, all the 7 local authorities have differing levels of information and kind of in-depth information on their websites. So we wanted to make sure that it was consistent. To ensure the website met our user needs, we gathered user needs through interviewing representatives from key user groups, so local authorities, the NHS, and the public. And once the website had been developed, it went through rigorous user testing and an accessibility audit to make sure that we had gathered everyone's required needs and it could be utilised once launched. Now it's launched, we're looking at road mapping, and how we can kind of update and improve on the website going forwards. So we'll be looking to integrate air quality forecasting and alert systems, so people will be able to see a daily air quality forecast on the data platform, as well as sign up to an alert system. Should air quality reach a certain level, they'll then get information as to what that level is and how they could reduce their personal exposure or stop localised air pollution from becoming worse. We're also working with the Birmingham City Council to see if we can integrate sensors that they are currently installing at all schools across the local authority onto our platform to make sure that it is a regional hub and people can find all relevant information in one place. And again, integrating regional monitoring from DEFRA, which is located sporadically across the region. So we hope that stakeholders such as schools and hospitals will be able to utilise the website and data platform to have a better understanding of air pollution in their area. So initially we have sent out information packs and communications materials that they can utilise to help them understand the sensor network, as well as offering out workshops that can be delivered within schools. But we're also going to be providing them with regular updates on data and what that data means for their area. We hope that the sensor network will provide us with a better understanding of particulate matter concentrations across the region, helping us provide more target measures and strategies. And the improved air quality monitoring will help us evaluate better those schemes such as those delivered by TFWM on improving air quality. And we hope that the consistent and easy to access information will help continue to deliver behaviour change initiatives and raise awareness around air pollution across the region. I'm now going to hand over to Liam, who's going to give you a quick tour of the website.
Everyone's seen that behind me, or online as well. This is cleanair.wmca.org.uk. It's a publicly available website. All the data in it is publicly available as well. And essentially, it's kind of as Els described, a kind of behaviour change tool, but also kind of trying to give accurate and simple information to the public. So we've tried to really restrict a lot of the technical terminology to be, as communicable as possible. And the homepage is kind of going into the issues of who's affected by poor air quality. Also a video that was done by the CA as well. But what I'll do is I'll just kind of go to some of the other aspects of the site, which is kind of talking about understanding what's being done about air quality in your area. So there's a bit on kind of proportion of emissions by sectors. So these are business sectors or like sectors of the economy, so transport, combustion industry, solvent use, things like that. Then there's also information about what the kind of the basic, like the legal obligations are, like what's an air quality management area, smoke control area, for example. And then every constituent authority in CA has like an individual page which talks about what is being done in their area. So I'll just Coventry. And so you can find the kind of the automatic urban and rural network, which is hosted by UK Air, which is a subdivision of DEFRA. There's also the information on what is kind of the air quality management area in Coventry and what kind of projects is Coventry and undertaking, and that's kind of consistent for all the different local authorities. So any projects that are being undergone, we made this in consultation with the air quality officers, the environmental health officers, the public health officers in all the authorities on what was going on, to make sure that we could give full information to the public on what's happening in their local area. But this site also comes with advice on how to handle things like improving outdoor air quality. So information about kind of car usage, road traffic usage, avoiding certain walking patterns if you want to, thinking about where you exercise in order to avoid poor air quality, and how you can get in contact with your kind of environmental protection or environmental health in your area. And then there's also a bit of work on indoor air quality, which is kind of one of the ones that's harder to kind of communicate about generally, I think. as a rule with air quality. So talking about wood burning, certain domestic heating methods. So what kind of fires and burners can release the most particulate matter in particular. Looking out for issues with mold, cleaning products as well. But the main kind of part of the site is the platform. So I'm just going to open it in another window because it's just more enjoyable to use it. So the platform shows data from all the sensors at an hourly kind of calculation. So it's showing it for 10 a.m. at the moment because basically we have to wait until the hour is done to do a calculation to show what's representative of that hour. So if we look at NO2, it's pretty even across the region, but looking at particulate matter today, there's quite a significant like high concentrations across the C8, and that is probably because of the weather, the kind of like the misty kind of weather we've had today. It's trapping the particulate matter in the atmosphere. So you're able to select a sensor and it will tell you kind of the general location of it, what authority it's in, what time the reading's for, and the sensor ID, as well as kind of showing you here on the, what's the name? Also, the daily air quality index scale, which is maintained by DEFRA, which is being considered for review at the moment. But when that goes through, we will take those considerations on. Go back as well. So you can also use the platform to kind of, there's a little explainer on what the pollutants are. So if you kind of want more information on what the types of pollutants that are found within sort of by the sensors, there's also charting available. So if I'm interested in a particular concentration, so sensor that's been down for a while. So if I just pick, go with the central area, I pick ozone. That's kind of showing me the general kind of trend over the last 7 days for that particular sensor. And if the kind of the average emission is in breach of the air quality guideline, that's pollutant, it will tell you from the chart as well. And there's also a link to the air quality objectives for people to understand what's going on with to understand what the objectives are. You can also get a list of all the sensors that we have in the region, just on this network. Though we are experimenting with kind of bringing other sensor networks into the overall kind of data flow, but because there's different standards, different kind of ways that the data is managed, we have to consider kind of how we effectively do that. And then there's also an option to download data as well. So if you're looking for data between, say, first weekend of March, and you can pick an individual authority or you can pick an individual device, and then you are able to export that data to a kind of an Excel file essentially in CSV, and that downloads to your laptop or your computer. It also works on phone, but we don't have the data download availability. So it is mobile compatible. It's also tablet compatible, but we just don't have the downloading data option on there, purely because we didn't know how to like prep the files for usage on mobile phones and things like that. But it's something that we're looking into as we look to develop the platform further.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions? I know Councillor Kendall has one to start off with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see in the report that there are no financial implications yet. Recently, we were told that DEFRA had withdrawn all funding for air quality control. So how much are we actually spending on this? And surely this report should have said where the money is and how much we've got to spend on air quality control. And if DEFRA hasn't withdrawn all the funding, is there any indication that this funding will be back in position?
Thank you. So this is being funded by the grant that we received back in March 23. So we have funding to maintain the sensor network up to 2028. In terms of DEFRA providing any more funding for the DEFRA air quality grant, so they may still provide local authorities with funding for statutory regulations. They haven't said whether or not they'll be bringing that grant back out.
All right, through you, Mr. Chairman. All right, what was the grant and how much is the remaining spending for this time?
The grant was just under 1 million, and we, in total, not just the sensor network, we have spent just under 900. I'd have to get the exact, I can provide the exact figure.
Yes, please do. Thank you. Councillor Kay.
Thank you. I'm wondering, the sensors are highlighting things like Tisley waste, which I think is a well-known problem. And I'm just wondering in what way the sensor data might help us address sources of pollution that weren't already evident under previous sensor monitoring.
Just for clarity, it's not an incinerator per se, but it's an energy from waste plant. Councillor Kay Tisley.
It's an incinerator.
So I think, as I mentioned, we utilised modelling that's been done by the University of Birmingham, which highlighted key area hotspots, which came up with some key industrial sites, hence Tisley having sensors, JLR. And we have also strategically located sensors away from those hotspots that were modelled so that we can gain a better understanding of particulate matter in areas where the modelling may not have shown heightened pollutant levels.
Okay, one question from me. We talk about transport as a cause of pollutants. I've raised this with Ray previously about rail transport because we seem to monitor through sensors the road network quite comprehensively. And as he said, we hopefully will pick up the data from schools, which are nearised as part of the programme. But with the increased use of rail freight, there's a lot of times where diesel trains that provide rail freight idle at red signal to give priority to commuter trains. We know that all trains coming through Snow Hill and Moore Street, with the exception of some HBO trains run by Chiltern, are diesel trains, and we know that there's a substantial mix of diesel and electric trains at New Street. They are causing air quality issues for the reasons that I've just gone through. What are we doing about those? And again, I make the plea, and I always do, for electrification of the Snow Hill lines, which I'm sure the rail team will pick up.
Okay, there's actually the Western Rail Executive Board, I think this presentation from Network Rail on what's happening with New Streets for that. That's something to be aware of. So with rail reform, there's perhaps opportunities for looking, at rail industry. And there's three sort of areas. There's rolling stock. There's getting more cleaner trains, related to electrification, possible, trains that have batteries for certain sensitive areas of use. There's the operations of trains, like still diesel multiple units that don't necessarily have to have all the engines running. It's just sort of like passengers on board, but reduce emissions. And sort of looking at timetabling issues. But I must say the RSSB, the Rail Standards Safety and Standards Board, do a lot of work on this. So, and then finally, with New Street, there are the fans that are triggered at a certain time, and then monitoring some other sort of equipment at the station. So there's various things that can be done. But I'd say with rail reform, maybe there's a chance to sort of lobby for some of these things more forcefully. I don't know if Peter wants to add anything.
Yes, I think you've picked up the key points there. Air quality is an active issue that's been looked up by the RSSB currently. They monitor key stations across the network. That monitoring certainly flags that Birmingham New Street is a major problem on the national network in terms of air quality. And hence the work on Network Rail and the RSSB to look at what are called Pluvone machines, which basically scrub the air on the worst polluted platforms at New Street. That helps a bit, but it doesn't fundamentally change the fact that New Street is a very polluted location in terms of air quality. So yes, there needs to be a clarity about industry plans for cleaning up the existing diesel trains that use the network in the West Midlands. New Street is the location due to its clearly the underground nature of the platforms. Yeah, I think we will be pushing very strongly as part of our strategic discussions with Network Rail and in the future with GBR about what is the national policy for rolling out electric trains and rolling out bi-mode trains in particular, because I think the industry strategy is very much focusing now on a bi-mode train solution whereby we have battery and electric services operating on the routes because of the affordability issues associated with full electrification. So we're in conversation at the moment with Network Rail, GBR, and Midlands Connect, who are doing work in this area as well, to come up with a region-wide strategy for how we have a decarb, how we have effectively an electrification strategy using bi-mode trains that can be rolled out over the coming decades. But it will not be a quick fix. And I think in particular we need to understand what can be done in the short term at New Street to clean the air at New Street. And again, as James says, hopefully we'll have the director giving an update to WMRE board on the work that Network Rail are doing there to clean the air at New Street.
Thank you very much, Peter. I've got Councillor Clements indicating to speak and then Councillor Ward to conclude this item agenda. So Councillor Clements.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much to the officers for the presentation. I'm really pleased to see this because I think it's very important for our residents to have access to real-time information about air quality. I think I don't know which of you it was, whether it was Jake, you mentioned the question of integrating with other networks of sensors, because in Birmingham, we are rolling out a network of air quality monitors at every school in the city, funded through net surplus revenue from the clean air zone. And is there going to be some integration with that? Because it's great to see that all this information being collated, from sensors and monitoring. But then there's a question about how the constituent councils in each of their areas use the information to try and influence people's behaviours. Because the point of the air quality monitors at schools in Birmingham is to give parents in particular information so that they can consider about how they choose to make the school journey in the morning and the evening, particularly primary schools. Because in thinking about the role of road traffic in creating NOx pollution and particulate matter. So that's the first question. And then just on the question of pollution at rail stations, as Tim knows, there was a big piece of scrutiny work done by the Health Scrutiny Committee in Birmingham, followed up by the Transport Scrutiny Committee. So that was looking at the action plan that's in place at New Street. And yes, there are fans and there are sort of pollution eating totems on the platform. But my concern is that every time I go to New Street, like last week, I was waiting for an Avanti train standing on the platform opposite a cross-country locomotive that was it was idling, it hadn't been switched off, and that was one of the major commitments that was supposed to be made by the train operating companies. And a few years ago, when the cross-country franchise was up for renegotiations, one of the big asks from Birmingham City Council was a move to electric or low emission locomotives. I don't know where we've got to on that, because I think that franchising was postponed, and obviously we're now in the scenario where the train operating companies, when their franchises expire, they're going to be taken back into public control. So I think we need to be tracking what's happening with the implementation of GBR and making sure that when those companies go back into public ownership, that they have that focus on hybrid locomotives or electric. Thank you.
So in terms of the integration of sensors, we're currently working with Birmingham City Council to look at how we can integrate their sensors onto the network. But I believe the sensors are still being installed at the moment, so it's probably not going to be until towards the end of the year that, if possible, that will be done. And in wider question around behaviour change, we've already kind of provided information to key stakeholders, including schools and hospitals, on how they can get that information out to patients, and we'll be providing them with summaries of the data in their local area and kind of providing suggestions on what they may be able to implement to help reduce concentrations and personal exposure at schools and healthcare centres.
Okay, I was going to say is that we have got a further item, agenda item 8 on railways bill consultation. So we'll ask rail officers to pick the second part of your question up in that, if that's okay, Councillor Clements. And
Yeah, fine.
And then move on to Councillor Ward for the final question on this item.
Well, I don't have a question, in actual fact, but I do think that the discussion or debate that we've just had underlines the importance of this work in collecting this data, and not just collecting it because, okay, you collect it, but so what? It's then important that the data is used to lobby for real change on the ground, and hopefully whichever Meg in the future is taking on this responsibility for air quality will keep an oversight on this data going forward, in order that we can do precisely that, use it to lobby for real improvement in air quality, particularly at New Street Station, which is a problem. And of course, the second function of this is to disseminate this information around the public, so the public are also informed, because I suspect most people who are travelling to and from New Street Station are blissfully unaware of the appalling air quality that they are suffering when they use that railway station. I suspect if more and more people became aware of it, there would be a genuine outcry about how damaging the air quality is at that particular location. So I do think this work is very, very important, and I do think it needs to be used to help drive some real change in the future.
And I can completely concur with that, Councillor Ward. So thank you very much indeed, Jake and team, for that presentation. Thank you very much. As Councillor Ward said, it's a very important part of the agenda of this next committee. And moving on to item agenda 7, an update from the Whittington Rail Executive, and A, performance update. And we have Fiona online to do the presentation. Welcome, Fiona, and off you go.
Hello, thank you very much. So for those of you who haven't met me, I am Fiona Hicken and I am the Rail Network Performance Manager. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the rail network performance within the Midlands. I know that when this was put on the forward plan, I think cancellations were significantly higher than they have been recently. So there has been some improvement there, and I'm just going to give you an overview on that. However, there is another burning area which I thought was prudent to cover, which comes in the form of the diesel unit short formation plan that has been put in place by West Midlands Railway in recent weeks. So as many of you may be aware, in recent weeks there have been a number of services on the Snow Hill and Hereford routes that have been operating with fewer carriages than you would normally have seen. West Midlands Railway have advised us that this is due to external supply chain issues that they have been impacted by. And it's two separate issues which have been happening, but unfortunately simultaneously occurring. So the Class 172s are the units that tend to operate on the Snow Hill lines, although they can be used on other routes, but they're primarily on the Snow Hill routes through Kidderminster into Birmingham and out towards the Stratford-upon-Avon, Leamington Spa areas. The main issue that they have experienced is to do with the wheel sets on the 172s, which have been requiring attention as they've been doing their bogie overhauls. And what they've found is that the attrition rate of some of the subcomponents has been higher than they had anticipated, or that the subcontractor had anticipated. And unfortunately, there's been a number of supply chain issues in Germany, which have resulted in difficulty in obtaining these subcomponents. And that's been leading to some delays in completing the overhauls that have to be undertaken. This is only something that affects the Class 172s. The similar fleets like the Class 170s have a different axle box setup, so they aren't affected by these supply chain issues. And then the 196s, which are used on the Shrewsbury and the Hereford routes, although this is primarily affecting the Hereford line, they are coming to their kind of 7,000 hours half-life limit, meaning that the engines need to have basically changed over. And there's quite a number of units that have been taken out of traffic at the moment because they need to have their engine changes. There's also been an increased pressure that on the 196s because of 6 units which have had an agreed sublease over to East West Rail. So there is much more pressure on the current fleet that WMR hold. So they have started to use some of the class 172s to cover the 196 diagrams on the Hereford route, just to avoid cancellations and obviously maintain some capacity rather than having too much of the units being short formed. So the West Midlands Trains, they sought approval from the Department for Transport to submit an amended formation plan so that the base plan reduces some of the carriages which will be used on a daily basis, which will affect 55 services each weekday, 46 on a Saturday and 10 Sunday services. The idea behind the plan is to reduce the impact in a more controlled fashion, as what was happening was on the day the control team were having to take the most operationally convenient course of action. So what the plan will do is to reduce 5 carriages down to 4, 4 down to 3, and so on and so forth, rather than having maybe 10 trains on 2 circuits, which have gone from 5 carriages down to 2 carriages. And that obviously reduces the ability for passengers to be able to board and leaves people behind on stations. They have done customer contact via the West Midlands Railway website and their social media, and there's been posters at stations and announcements on the stations and on the trains as well, which some of you may have heard. This plan started on the 24th of February and has been in place for 2 weeks, and it's going to continue through until the May timetable change. So we've been monitoring very, very heavily over the last 2 weeks how much impact it's actually having to the passengers travelling on the route, as it had obviously been raised by some passengers that they weren't able to board the trains, the carriages had been reduced. So I started to collate based on the base plan, how many units should be in traffic on each of the services, how many of them were operating with fewer carriages than they're specified to. And as you can see, coming through the beginning of February, late January into February, the number of services running with fewer carriages than planned has significantly increased. But just because there's fewer carriages doesn't mean that the passengers are necessarily being impacted, because if you think about those those early morning services or the late evening services, there won't be heavy passenger loadings on them. There may only be a handful of passengers. So the other way to measure short formations is where the stated seating or the booked seating on that train or the amount of passengers that can stand as well as being seated, where the services have failed to meet that passenger load capacity. So if there's 400 people booked to be on a train or to that would generally load onto a train, how many occasions has that train not provided that capacity? And as you can see from comparing the top graph to the bottom graph, the impact to passengers should, in theory, be quite minimal. And if I just look at so that was the Snow Hill line, and this is the Hereford route here. As you can see, similar situation. There was a big spike in December, but it has been up and down and quite heavy since February, with a number of carriages that are less than planned. And slightly more impact than the Snow Hill lines. The Herefords did have a very big spike in December. That was the first week of the timetable, the December timetable. But it has been gradually coming down over these last few weeks. But there is heavy monitoring going on, because there have been on the day short formations as well as the planned formations. And the theory is obviously with the units being taken out of the base plan, they can get the maintenance that they require, and the supply chain issues will catch up, and then these units can go back into service. But there does seem to be quite a number of services on the day which are still being impacted, as well as the planned ones. So we are keeping a very, very close eye on things, and if anybody does have any feedback, or if they've seen anything or had any information passed to them, then please do provide it to us so that we've got the holistic picture and we can raise these with our regular meetings with West Midlands Railway. Before I move on, are there any questions? I can't see hands, so.
No, sorry, no, there's no hands raised in this room, so please continue.
Okay, thank you. So punctuality wise, just to give you a very, very quick summary of the different operators within the Midlands. For those of you who aren't familiar with the rail performance metrics, punctuality is measured through a metric called T3, and it looks at every station along the train's journey, not just the final destination like PPM. That was the previous performance measure that was used. So it's far more accurate and allows a lot more granularity so we can see where problems are occurring. T3 measures the number of station calls that have arrived within 2 minutes and 59 seconds of the publicly advertised timetable. So this is the different operators that operate in the West Midlands. Chiltern in the blue, green is West Midlands Trains, Transport for Wales in yellow, Cross Country are red, and Avanti are the dark blue, dark green colour. And for the majority of the operators, T3 performance tends to dip in autumn and early winter. You get a lot of rail adhesion issues, which tends to cause more slippage in the kind of the punctuality of the timetable. But when we come into the early calendar months, there is a big reprise, and this year the current seasonal upward curve is continuing as it would be expected to, but performance levels have actually exceeded, for West Midlands Trains particularly, they have exceeded what we would have seen last year. WMT have had a 2% increase for the comparative periods last year, which is largely positive, and as a result of the timetable changes which have been made. Their T3 failures have most recently been related to things like weather, points failures, trespasses, etc. And then just to bring out Cross Country and Avanti have also seen significant positive restoration for their punctuality. Cross Country have struggled very badly over the last 12 to 18 months, as you're probably aware, but their recent last period that ended in February, they saw the highest periodic outcome that they have seen for the last 2 years, which is very positive. And then from an overview for cancellations, it was a difficult period across the autumn for cancellations, particularly around weather-related challenges, and that did continue into period 11, which was January, but there has been a positive reduction in the most recent period, period 12, for all except Chiltern. But Chiltern's impact was as a result of one single incident, which was a points failure at Marylebone on the 20th of February, and accounted for 65% of all of their cancellations. So generally, still largely performing very, very well. In addition to T3 improvement for Cross Country, they actually saw the lowest percentage of their service being cancelled in a single period since April 2022. So again, that's very positive, and it is definitely an improving picture that we have seen from them. But 50% of their cancellations are still stemming from driver-related causes, so something just to keep an eye on. And Transport for Wales, following the incident that happened at the back end of last year, they had been seeing quite a lot of cancellations due to unit shortages, but that has now started to level out. But their technical fleet failures is still staying relatively similar. So that's a very, very, very brief summary, but I want to focus on West Midlands Railway, as they obviously operate the bulk of the services within the West Midlands. And as you'll be aware, there has been a significant increase in the number of services that have been cancelled across this last 11, 12 months, particularly the summer. And although infrastructure issues do play their part, and you can see in this dark blue bar, this is where infrastructure issues are captured, it tends to be very large impacting events like line-side fires and cable thefts that drive these incidents occurring. Whereas the most common theme for cause of impact for cancellations in West Midlands does tend to be around driver availability. And that has been a common theme since the pandemic. There were driver training backlogs caused by the social distancing measures. That was the initial struggle. And then we saw the industrial action happening for all of last year and then the very first part of this year. And then there's also been the driver training, which has impacted the Midlands because of the new fleets that have been added into the region. So the 196s a couple of years ago, and then this year we had the Class 730s, which have been introduced onto the Cross City and to some of the other routes within the Midlands area. But the cancellations, although it had been predicted that the cancellations would occur because of the driver training that would be occurring at the same time as introducing the new fleets, these cancellations have not been isolated to the depots that the training was being undertaken at, and there's been notable impact upon the Snow Hill lines and the Birmingham to Hereford routes, which, as I've just referenced previously, have now been impacted by unit availability. So those two routes have had significant impact this year. Up until January, the talk on self-cancellations had been hovering at around 3 to 4%, which is quite high. But since January, that has dropped down to around 1% of the service. And very briefly to cover, 67% of the cancellations have fallen within West Midlands Railways gift. Only 31% of the cancellations have fallen towards infrastructure related issues, and largely that has been seasonal issues with flooding and trees on the line, etc. So it's come from the severe weather that seems to be happening more often. I will cover the driver cancellations quickly, but the outside of the driver related issues, the Class 730s, there was impact predicted for the bedding in of this fleet. When you introduce a new fleet, you do tend to see an increase in the number of cancellations, as there's a number of teething issues that need to kind of get sorted out that haven't been picked up in the testing phases. Door faults have been one of those impacted, but that has become less since the modifications have started to take place. And as these trains continue to bed in and are operating on more routes, we will see more of a drop in the cancellations from the Class 730s. But there is a concern. Stabling of the units is high on our radar because there's not enough depot space to accommodate this fleet. Some of the units are having to be stabled in the sidings or at stations such as Birmingham New Street overnight. And it's limiting the opportunity for the toilets to be emptied or for the services to be cleaned before the next day's service. And it's obviously giving the opportunity for individuals to graffiti the units. And you've probably seen this as you've been out and about, I'm sure, or have had it fed back to you. So as I mentioned, the Hereford route and the Snow Hill lines have been significantly impacted by cancellations, and this did largely come about due to driver availability. And just picking out a very quick graph showing week by week the cancellations which occurred for driver availability last year when we were at the peak of industrial action, and there were numerous weeks of action short of a strike and strikes occurring, compared to this year, which is the lighter green bars. You can see that this year the lighter green bars week on week has been higher compared to last year, which is surprising. The red, I did pick out when the pay deal was accepted, which is just after week 25 in September. Did start to see some reduction in the number of cancellations, but then the first week of December, the rest day working agreement was removed, and then was subsequently accepted again, but with different terms. Since that point, there has been a dramatic decrease in the number of cancellations. So I think it would have been around here that this was put on to the forward plan. And since December, mid-December, cancellation levels have dropped down significantly. And if you compare last year's half term to this year's half term, we saw less than 50% of cancellations occurring. But one thing just to put into context, there was industrial action still ongoing last year in the comparative periods, and particularly through weeks 44 and 45, which wasn't seen this year. So although things are positive, there are some other considerations when you're trying to compare numbers directly. So the Snow Hill and Worcester recovery plan, it had been identified that the Snow Hill routes and the Worcester services, the Hereford services, were seeing a very dramatic increase in the number of cancellations, and this was very heavily impacted by driver availability. So there was a couple of things that were put in place by West Midlands Railway after discussion with the Department for Transport and West Midlands Rail Executive, which involved removal of a particular route called the Galton Curve from the timetable. That occurred in December when they were able to take that out of the planned diagrams. There were a number of drivers who didn't have this route knowledge, and it was resulting in the same trains being cancelled very frequently because they just didn't have a driver who had the route knowledge to be able to go and operate on that particular diagram. So since that's been removed, there has been a greater flexibility in the rostering, allowing for enhanced coverage for each of the services. There's also been an increased management focus on sickness among the train crew and people that have been restricted from duty, whether that's from an operational or a medical perspective. And they have been developing return to work plans, which we are seeing an improvement in the availability happening since that has been more of a focus. They removed the route refresher training from Saturdays. So Saturdays were always the biggest risk from a train crew availability on these two particular routes. And by removing route refresher training from Saturdays and moving into the week, there has been a reduction in the number of cancellations occurring on Saturdays on the routes. And then, of course, there's the continuation of the recruitment. The two depots have largely ageing workforces, and they do need to recruit new people as they start to see the attrition of people retiring. Worcester Depot has 9 new starters, Snow Hill has 5, and those are expected to complete their training, or have expected to complete their training by the end of February. We're just waiting on final confirmation of that. And just to show you the impact, so in rail periods 2, 3, 4, we started to notice that there was a big increase in the, we started to notice that the services were being impacted significantly. And over the summer, this is the Hereford route, it was getting quite high, up to 14, 15% of the service being cancelled every 4 weeks, which is very, very chunky. If you're trying to travel on that route, you would most likely be impacted by a cancellation on one of your journeys in and out of the city centre, if that's where you were going. At the end of rail period 7, so just coming into October, West Midlands Trains put their action plan into place, and from there you have seen a gradual decrease across each period. And then following the new rest day work agreement, which happened in December, we did start to see a significant drop in the percentage of service being cancelled. But with the Hereford route, I think a lot of that is to do with the removal of that Galton Curve diagram, or the routing that was in there. It was 87% of the service being cancelled, and largely due to driver availability. And as you can see from the top graph, there are very few other reasons for services to be cancelled when you group them all by reason for the year. And the Snow Hill lines, a very, very similar picture. The Snow Hill routes are operated by multiple depots, unlike the Hereford route, which has only got one depot which covers them. But the Snow Hill lines share the Worcester depot, Snow Hill, Starbridge and Leamington. So train crew from all of those 4 depots can cover the services. But 29% of the cancellations which were occurring on the Snow Hill lines were due to Worcester train crew being unavailable. So if we can get Worcester back up and running and get it working efficiently, that does have a knock-on impact to Snow Hill, although of course a number of those cancellations have also happened from mostly from Snow Hill depot. And very finally, just to show you the cancellations over the years, there has been a significant shift with the kind of percentage of cancellations which have occurred from the different functions. It used to be very heavily fleet focused back in 2017, 18, 19, and that shift has changed. There's less fleet impact, but more driver impact. Nationwide industrial relations have obviously contributed to that over the last few years, as well as all of the additional training requirements for the West Midlands area. But it is hoped that the improved industrial relations, the resolution of the pay agreement, this new rest day working agreement that has been put in place from December, which I think runs for it's either 18 months or 2 years, I can't remember. But with that and the improved management processes to help retain colleagues in productive work and give a greater focus on the kind of process management, especially with the appointment of this, they've got a driver optimization manager is what they've termed it, which focuses on all of this productive and management processes elements. That should hopefully keep the cancellation levels down. But there is still some risk. I don't want to paint this as a completely rosy picture because we do still have some risk. The new fleet introductions are going to continue through next year, and then the kind of second tranche of this Class 730, the 5-car units are going to be introduced, which does again increase some training requirements, albeit not as much as it has been this year. That's my very, very quick summary of the rail performance, and happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you very much, Fiona, and thank you for that very detailed presentation. I can't see anyone indicating to speak apart from Councillor Kay, so could we keep this brief, Councillor Kay, because we've got quite a lot on the agenda still to get through.
Does the train service use a similar simulator to train drivers on new routes in the same way as the buses train their drivers?
Yes, so every fleet that is introduced obviously has different training requirements, but yes, when the train drivers are training, they do use simulators, but then they do require traction training out on units as well. So the Class 730s have had quite a significant change to different types of units that they've operated previously. And I think the agreed training that they had for these particular units were 8 days, 8 rostered days. So it can kind of take a driver out for 2 weeks of the year to carry out the training, which is quite a heavy impact. It wasn't quite as much for the Class 196s when they were introduced a couple of years ago. I think that was only 5 days.
Okay, I hope that answers the question. Councillor Akhtar online.
Thank you, Chair. And I know you said you are pushed for a time, but let me say to Fiona, in our country, we are prepared to accept inefficiency, poor management decision about workers' relations, running out of trains, running out of drivers, holiday periods. I say to you nicely, I had a meeting with Ian, your manager director of West Midland Trains last week. And my plea to him was that, look, have a diverse force, recruit people from different communities to start with. Number 2, far as Elephant and Bell Line, hopeless, seriously. Most of the time is the coaches. What have you presented us is absolutely not acceptable. Not acceptable. Trains are crucial to our economy, crucial to our communities, crucial to environment, and they're not running. They're not running properly at all. It's a miserable situation. No officers or no political leadership should accept that, Mr. Chairman. It's abysmal. Thank you.
I concur entirely that it's not acceptable. I've been stuck in one of those trains which were going from 5 carriages to 2 before we changed that, and I can tell you it was not pleasant. So I take those as comments more than a question for Fiona, Councillor Akhtar. But
I had questions with managing directors. I pleaded with them, sir, we need efficient services. It's not acceptable. I'm on a West Midland Rail Executive Board also, and it's not acceptable. Officers know my views, and I think it's a dereliction of a duty on part of West Midland Trains and our officers and as a political leadership, that we are not holding these people their feet to the fire.
And I look forward, because as you know, I'm an observer member of the West Midlands Rail Executive, to you raising those at the next WMRE meeting in April, I believe. I'm going to move on because, as I said, we're pushing for time. And 7B is future timetable changes and the Midlands Rail Hub Right. And it's Peter, I think, who's doing the presentation on this.
Lisa, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so those who don't know me, I'm Peter Sargent, head of the Quality and Strategy at West Midlands Executive. I will be very brief on the basis that we're running a short time, but the paper in front of you is just an update in terms of the relevant timetables. In terms of timetables, I think I'll draw out is first of all that we're hoping that this year Avanti will go to their full free train now service between Birmingham, London and Euston, which we were hoping would be delivered a lot earlier than it has been, but they've been busy recruiting train through, getting their new Evero trains up and running. And this year, so in May, there will be an uplift and a further uplift in September. And at that point, hopefully we'll get rid of the remaining half-hour gaps that exist between Coventry and Birmingham, and Stanwell, Dudley and Wolverhampton will have faster trains to London all day, because they'll be able to connect onto the fast trains to London rather than the slower trains to London that many of them currently connect onto. So some real benefits to having a full Avanti service by later this year. Avanti have introduced their new Evero rolling stock, some of its buy mode. That has resulted in them being able to get rid of their diesel Voyager trains, which on the one hand should be positive for the air quality discussion we had earlier at New Street, but those Voyager trains, lots of them have transferred to cross country, and cross country have therefore been strengthening a lot of their services and are looking to run additional services this year as well, which I think is very good news from the overcrowding issues that we've seen on lots of cross country services, and also allows them to restore a lot of the Reading to Newcastle services that run via Birmingham as well from the timetable change. So cross country will be reinstating a lot of their services back to pre-COVID levels from this May, and will be say running strengthened trains on a number of routes. And another benefit of that is that they are looking to call extra services on Worcestershire Parkway, which means that Worcestershire Parkway will have enhanced services between Birmingham and Bristol as well, and more services on Worcestershire Parkway into Birmingham as a result of that as well. So cross country is good news in terms of more services. We're actively involved in conversations at the moment with West Midlands Trains about some of their detailed timetabling changes. Nothing significant change planned for this May though, but we are looking to explore for next year whether improved services between Birmingham and Stratford can be introduced. We're having a detailed conversation with them at the moment. The main area of interest next to this committee is the ongoing debate on open access, and many of you will be aware that a company called Wrexham Shropshire Midland Railway Company has proposed running 5 trains a day from Wrexham to London Euston. These services would run via Shrewsbury Telford, Wolverhampton, Walsall, Coleshill Parkway and Nuneaton into Euston, and will clearly provide direct links from Walsall to London, which I think will be really helpful. They've also indicated they'll be interested in exploring calling Darlaston Station as well when that station opens. So we have recently had confirmation that DfT supports in principle that application. It doesn't support any other open access application that exists. Subject to capacity and performance, we wait to see whether or not the ORR, the Office of Rail and Roads, supports their application. But I think the fact that the DfT has come out in support of WSMR is very positive for the hopes of that being approved. So we don't know the exact timescale for that being approved, but one would like to think that sometime next year, if it does get approval this year, we could have the WSMR service operating in our region. So that's the big recent move in development on timetables.
I'm going to stop you there just very briefly. And would that also support the construction of a 2-platform station at Aldwych if the WSMR proposal comes forward?
We will need to explore the opportunity for that service to call Aldwych. It would require an extra platform, which will create extra complexity and costs for the Aldwych project, but will create extra benefits, and we would need to explore the pros and cons of whether or not it could also call Aldwych. It also requires confirmation from a timetabling perspective that will be deliverable as well. So there are a few issues to work through there with WSMR, but we need to get clarity that whether they have their access rights approved or not before we can have those conversations in more detail. And a very quick update on Midlands Rail Hub. I think many of you will be aware of the big project to build lots of infrastructure in central Birmingham, around Bawdsley, around Moore Street, around Kingston, Norton and Barnsley and elsewhere to enhance services in and out of central Birmingham. The report you have gives a very quick update as to where we are with this project at the moment, which is that NetRail has been given £123 million to develop the full business case, which includes doing detailed design work on the western central elements of Midlands Rail Hub. So they are doing detailed work on that at the moment. They are also accelerating work on the eastern elements, which haven't been so developed due to the changes in HS2 strategy. So the eastern elements are catching up in terms of design and business case at the moment. We are working closely as WMRE with Midlands Connect and Network Rail and DfT on the detail of the business case going forward for Midlands Rail Hub. Network Rail are about to appoint detailed designers to undertake that design development work, which hopefully happen quite soon. And we're continuing to lobby very strongly for the funding to move Midlands Rail Hub forwards. And clearly, we will need to get support from the government as part of the comprehensive spending review process that they are still committed to moving Midlands Rail Hub forwards. Linked to MR8 Midlands Rail Hub is the need to shut Bawdsley Station as it isn't. We can't continue with the station of Bawdsley with the new western cord into Moore Street. The intention is there will be a formal closure process started on Bawdsley Station late spring, early summer, and we're currently actively engaging with Birmingham City Football Club and other stakeholders about the consultation and the impact that may potentially have on effectively currently by football fans travelling to and from St Andrews is the main use of Bawdsley Station. So we're working through all those issues, but we're waiting confirmation from the DfT as to when they're happy to commence that formal statutory consultation process for Bawdsley, which is needed to facilitate all the wider investment in the Midlands Rail Hub project.
Thank you very much, Peter. Just to clarify, because DfT announced in October 23 that the Midlands Rail Hub would have £1.75 billion worth of funding, and you talked about in Feb 24, 123 million funding approved for the full business case, which was the first element. But we were absolutely assured by DfT in October 23 that we would get 1.75 billion for the Midlands Rail Hub to be funded in full. What has happened since then? Where is this, in inverted commas, missing 1.6+ billion?
Yes, I mean the 1.75 billion to introduce Midlands Rail Hub was flagged as part of the Network North set of schemes that the DfT and the government at that time was looking to fund as part of cutting back HS2 from north of Birmingham. We understand that the current government is still committed to that, but it's clearly it wasn't, unlike the 123 billion, which has actually been physically given to Network Rail to do the design development work. Like all major spending decisions, is dependent on business case and dependent on budgets and things at the time. So as far as we're concerned, we are working towards the assumption that the funding will still be available to make that, but we still need to go through all the business case stages, and government still needs to confirm money is available. And clearly, as part of wider spending review priorities, it will fit into part of those wider conversations. So,
Councillor Nicholas.
Thank you, Chair. One could be led to believe that Birmingham's the centre of the universe. I'd like to raise an issue about another city in the West Midlands and a recent conference that was held in Coventry in relation to Midlands Connect's aspiration for a link between Coventry and Leicester. I know it's been on our agenda for some considerable time, but I see no reference to that important link in the paper. I would request a report coming to committee chair about what Midlands Connect's aspirations are for the underpass at Nuneaton to ensure we do get that link from Coventry through to Nottingham. Thank you very much.
as I understand it, the whole Midlands Connect under which the Midlands Rail Hub sits is to improve east-west rail links between the West Midlands and the East Midlands, and that's MRH East. So in that spirit, I think Councillor Nicholas makes an excellent point in terms of those enhanced transport links. Coventry sitting in the West Midlands, Letton, Derby, Nottingham sitting in the East Midlands. But I think on top of what Councillor Nicholas has said, we need to increase our shouting for the Midlands Rail Hub to government and hope that all parties within the combined authority get behind a campaign, given it appears to be a game changer in terms of all these major infrastructure projects that will actually improve and unlock capacity for economic growth and rail capacity, particularly, but not exclusively, between the West Midlands and the East Midlands. Picking up Councillor Nicholas's point that obviously it's got to be the whole of the West Midlands that benefits, whether it's the cities of Birmingham, Coventry and Wolverhampton, or whether it's all the other towns in the West Midlands. So what can we do as an ONS committee to actually more forcibly make its case to DfT and the government in terms of getting it fully funded as per the October 23 1.75 billion settlement, which from what you said is now to risk as part of the comprehensive spending review?
I absolutely agree that as a region, there are lots of big, huge benefits from both Midlands Rail Hub and the Coventry, Leicester, Nottingham scheme, which we are fully supportive of, fully behind. And Midlands Connect have been doing a lot, as you say, doing a lot of lobbying on that recently. I think it should be holding all politicians across the West Midlands to support and make the case that better connectivity, both in the region, but cross-regionally and across into the East Midlands in particular, is of huge benefit to the region, especially following the changes to HS2 strategy, which means there's no longer going to be an HS2 link towards East Midlands Pathway and that way. So I think, yes, political support and lobbying for Midlands Rail Hub and Coventry Leicester and saying this is important to the region can only be hugely beneficial in terms of hopefully making the case to secure the necessary funding to come in due course from government. So, yeah, very happy to help and support members in any way we can to make that case as well.
Well, we've had a commitment there from Peter, but please pick up Councillor Nicholas's specific point about Coventry and the links to the East Midlands. And can we do that as soon as possible, please? Did you have a follow-up, Councillor?
Just briefly, just a reminder that I did call for a report. Not every member on this committee is familiar with the history of this project, and it would be very useful to have an update coming to committee so then we can put the necessary pressure via the mayor to ensure that we do get that necessary link.
I agree completely, and I see this as a briefing for the entire committee so we can delve into this in a lot more detail, supported very ably by Councillor Auden as the Railmeg chair. I've got two people indicating to speak, Councillor Clements and Councillor Akhtar. So again, could we try and keep it as concise as possible, please?
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. And I just wanted to say how great it is to see the West Midlands Rail Exec colleagues briefing us today. So thanks for setting that in motion, Chair. And Pete, Tom, and your colleague, great to have you here. Just on the West Midlands Rail or the Midlands Rail Hub, Midlands Connect, absolutely crucial. And we need, you're right, we as councillors need to make the case for it, and it fits perfectly with the government's agenda for economic growth. And I think, I don't want to get into a political debate with Tim, but we all know about the robustness or otherwise, of financial commitments that were made by the outgoing government, and that's why the current government is having to have the spending review. I'm happy for this to be dealt with in as an email afterwards, but I just wanted to ask Peter, where we've got to on the ticketing reform work. I know it's slightly off the agenda, but I have a particular interest in what's happened to the debate with the DfT about the afternoon peak. So at some point, I'd welcome an update on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That might be covered by the railway bill consultation, and in particular, para 2.9 subsection E on page 30 of the agenda pack, as the next item agenda. But if not, then I'll ask the rail officers to send you an email physically about that. Councillor,
thanks.
Councillor Attar.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, there are three major projects in Midlands, West Midland Metro, Hub, and HS2. That is the race, and let's see who can deliver first. It's all about delivery, isn't it? Regarding Coventry and Leicester, that is our dream. Thank you, Councillor John McNicholas, but we also need a bay platform in Coventry. Second thing is that regarding Avanti, this is another operator which is awful, abysmal services for so many years. And West Midland coastline is one of the most major economic artery for our country. And we have neglected, we let these operators get away with it. So Peter, my question to you is 3 trains. How are you going to make sure that they deliver 3? And if they don't do it, what are you going to do about it? Right. My other question is regarding the hub. We all know New Street, Birmingham is full capacity now. And we need this hub. We need more capacity. I understand about the codes and everything. I have read about the hub, you know, the whole program. But sir, as you said, the strategy of HS2 is not going to northwest or northeast. So in future, say for instance, we have this business case, and we don't have passengers coming from north all the way from Glasgow or from the east to Midlands. Isn't there danger that we will lose this passenger numbers, and the government can say you haven't got the numbers passengers? What you got to say? Your advice.
Okay, before I call the officers in, can I just emphasise that's why it is all about delivery. 3 priorities: delivery, 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 and that's why we specifically said we wanted to be the Transport Delivery ONS Committee and not just the Transport ONS Committee of the West Midlands Command Authority. The clue is in the name, and I hope that all officers in the room are cognizant of why we asked delivery be specifically part of the title of this ONS committee. But Peter, in answer to Councillor Attar's specific questions.
So first of all, I'm very confident that Avanti will deliver 3 trains per hour service. They've been incrementally enhancing the service as their rolling stock and train crew situation stabilised. I think they're now optimistic they have enough rolling stock and train crew to run them. And one of the reasons why final improvements will only happen in September is the fact that it's only by then they're confident they can deliver that. So I think I'm as optimistic as I possibly can be that that will happen in practice. I think the broader question about rail growth and how we deal with it in a world when we don't have HS2 going north of Birmingham is a really good question. There's a lot of rail industry work going on. We are involved in conversation with Network Rail and lots of other bodies about what the strategy needs to look like more broadly to support that. So it's too early to know exactly what that strategy looks like at the moment. There are all manner of challenges in terms of network capacity, not just in our region, but in the northwest as well. So all I can say is rest assured there's lots of conversations happening to ensure that it doesn't become a blocker to investment, and there is a plan B without HS2 running to it in full as we were hoping to previously. So yeah, just to give the committee rest assured that that's a big issue that we're looking at the moment. And
thank you very much, Peter. Councillor Kay, again, please, if you could be concise.
Is it time to reconsider the HS2 project and put a conventional track on the new route in order for it to be able to connect more successfully to routes travelling northwards.
And enhance capacity.
I think you're probably referring to the study undertaken by the previous mayor alongside the current mayor of Greater Manchester, and perhaps we could get an update on where that report and actions from that report, I think it was done by Ella, if I recall correctly, yes, sits now both within the West Midlands Combined Authority and also the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. And we could include that as part of any Midlands Rail Hub briefing. Did you want to come back on that, Councillor Kay?
No, thank you for your support.
Okay, good. Right, if there's no other persons indicating to speak, thank you very much. And we move seamlessly onto the Railways Bill consultation. And I believe it's Tom who's going to be presenting on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. So I will keep this as brief as I absolutely can. Facts are the matter are that on the 18th of February, the Department of Transport announced a consultation on the draft legislation for the Railways Bill. That will run until the 15th of April, which is a Tuesday. And in keeping with many government consultations, this is it's technical and it's targeted. There's 20 questions asked across 7 themes. But crucially, of those themes, one of them is specifically on devolution, which is extremely welcome. About this time last year, there had been a previous consultation on a similar subject, and devolution did not receive such prominent billing. So that is very, very welcome. So the intent in the draft legislation is encouraging for organisations like our own. Of course, as is all these things, the devil is likely to be in the detail. And so in the consultation response that we are pulling together, we will submit by the 15th of April. We will be responding to those questions and identifying a number of areas where there's probably further work required, just to fully flesh out the regulatory framework and operating model that the rail industry will operate under. But this is a big fundamental change to the way the rail industry works. It's the undoing of the settlement that was created in 1993. So it's absolutely right that this is done in the proper way through consultation, giving as many people a chance to have their say as possible, and ensuring that what is put in place is fit for the future, and in particular ensures a very strong voice and role for locally accountable and involved bodies. We will be bringing a draft of the actual consultation response, ideally to the next Rail and Metro Meg. This will just be one of a number of different forums that we'll be going to ensure that it receives adequate governance and scrutiny. West Midlands Rail Executive Board is another one. There are several others that we'll be involved in. Also working very closely with colleagues at other devolved bodies through the Urban Transport Group to ensure that what we are saying is going to be complementary of the aspirations of our other devolved partners. But clearly, by responding with one voice and making suggestions that complement one another, we stand a great chance of success in shaping that legislation. So that's all I'll say there, and leave time for any questions anyone might have.
Thank you very much indeed, Tom. I would hope that the WMRE response is shared with members of this committee as well, not just the Railway Chair, so ably by Councillor Organ. Could you pick up the fares, ticketing and retailing, the ticketing reform from Councillor Clements as well? Councillor McNicholas, you indicated to speak.
That's to emphasise the point you just made, Chair, but when will the Mayor receive the draft? Will it be prior or on the day of the 7th of April? Because we need to have a look at it just to see, but when I say we, all members of TDOS are invited to any Meg. So is it intended to send it out to all members of TDOS so that they can have a look and then respond if appropriate? Thank you.
I think that's exactly what I asked for earlier, that it goes to all members. So all members know what the official WMRB response is going to be. That's non-negotiable in my book. Councillor Clements.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it was really just to ask the WME colleagues, is there going to be scope in this to actually achieve our aspirations, for the fares reform in the region, particularly the afternoon peak? That's the first question. And then just a comment really that I'm really pleased to see this whole agenda moving forward. But for me, I want the government to go further, because I feel it's a weakness in this, that the ROSCOs, the rolling stock operating companies, and the freight companies are not going to be brought within the scope of this. But that's more a point for us to reflect on as the politicians in the room. Thank you very much.
Okay, and so if you could answer Councillor Clements's point, but I think, and I didn't give you time to answer this one, so my apologies. When will that response be shared with members of the committee to enable members of this committee, if they so wish, to write their own individual responses in light of the draft WME and our response? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We always endeavour to release the papers to the MEG meeting in advance of the MEG meeting itself. We ought to be able to do this on this occasion because the WMRE board will be happening a few days before. We'll need to make sure we've got draft responses available for that. It's always a possibility that what goes to the MEG won't necessarily include any contributions as a consequence of the WMRE board, but we'll make sure any change control is obvious to members when they come to read it. On the points from Councillor Clems, I did do a Control F in the summary document, and I found that rolling stock was mentioned a grand total of twice across around 50 pages. It's not necessarily clear, therefore, exactly what the position of rolling stock will be. Worth saying, though, that this is only this is a technical consultation on the framing of the legislation, so we might not necessarily expect to have detailed questions of a future GBR policy on rolling stock to be stated here. But it's always very helpful to flag things that aren't talked about, because those are exactly the kind of things that, as I say, the devil is in the detail, and we do need to have ongoing engagement with DfT and in future GBR on. The same is absolutely true of the point about fares reform. There is more in the document about fares. I think Chapter 5 does talk about fares, and it does say lots of helpful things about flexibility, but it also does talk about, mentions in the report, guardrails are going to be put in place by the Secretary of State. And again, it'd be very helpful to understand exactly what that entails, how much flexibility is envisaged within that, and what the implications of that would be on a very hyper-local example, such as the one about evening fares that we've been talking about in this forum and other forums for quite some time.
Thanks.
Okay, and Councillor Kay to conclude. Councillor Kay to conclude, and then I'm going to call the make Chairman. Councillor Kay.
Thank you. 2.9D financial framework refers the process of funding passenger services is less clear. Now, I think they're all aware of the financial pressures on government, not the least to find some more funding for local authorities, as well as the NHS, and we've got a new priority of defence. And I feel that there is a risk now that public transport funding is slipping down the list, and that we should be taking a much more cautious approach and assume that we're going to have to fit in what we deliver with existing budgets. Do you agree that we should have better clarity on the funding of passenger services?
Apologies, Councillor, it may just have been my error in the way it's being drafted. Although I don't disagree with you that having greater clarity on how the rail industry is funded from operations maintenance is absolutely crucial to ensure that the right long-term investment decisions can be made. What this refers to is the ambiguity in the consultation document as to whether the current annual budgeting process for rail operations is going to continue, or whether it will switch to the 5-year funding window that is already used for rail infrastructure. And one of the questions that we'll be raising is to try and ask for some that ambiguity to be cleared up. Clearly, our view is that the longer the investment cycle, the longer the budget certainty, the better the outcomes that we deliver for customers, community, and taxpayers.
Thank you. And paragraph G, remind us about train driver licensing. Our visit to National Express depot, I was able to confirm that bus drivers earn 38,000 a year, which is broadly comparable with HGV drivers, and yet media reports tell us that train drivers' pay is nearer 90,000. A lot of the driver availability problems are down to the cost of maintaining sufficient drivers at £90,000 a year, and of course the regional industrial action. Will the WMRE have powers to address the excessive pay structures in the rail industry, and also the restrictive practices which add so much to the cost of passenger rail fares? Thank you.
I must confess, Councillor Kane, that the Chapter 7 train driver licensing certificate regime is probably the one that I am least informed on. From my first reading, it looked to be rather technical and to do with the implications of the UK no longer being part of the EU for the way that train drivers are licensed and certified. There had been a degree of standardisation whilst we were part of the European community to enable interoperability of driving standards and things like that across the continent. The consultation question, as is framed in the document, talks about whether or not the government should be given the ability to amend, revoke these standards, but it does say that that will be subject to a consultation were it to ever decide to do so.
Thank you. My question was rather more oblique that and to do with the cost of employing people within the rail industry.
Yes, if I may. Are we really going to go down the path of discussing negotiated rates for the job? Should we not be also considering chief executives, for example? I mean, it's all part and parcel of how we live today, and I'm not sure that we should be venturing on that particular path. Beware of Pandora's box.
I think I would say that we need, as we discussed, to see the WMRE response, and then if we wanted as individual members to write in to make our concerns, that is up to us as individual members to do so. And I would encourage all members of this committee, if they so desire, to write in after we've seen the draft response of the WMRE, and Councillor Kay can, in his individual capacity, pick up those.
Absolutely.
Councillor Gordon.
Thank you everyone for your interest in this item, and Tom, thank you for the answer you picked up, but also for the commitment to importantly get that information out in advance to the next Meg. And if we can just repeat the invitation so everyone's got it clearly in their diaries, those who wish to come along and join that one, to be able to take part. A couple of things I'd just add. I'd reiterate what Tom said about the proof is going to be in the pudding around localism. Words are all really good. All governments of all colours are really good at putting words about localism in. Whether they'll actually be delivered is what we need to make sure happens going forward. In terms of the financial implications, which a couple of people have picked up, again, at this point, it's really difficult to know what actual implications will come out of it. If there is any, onto us here in the West Midlands, and so that'll be a key thing to monitor as we go forward. And then the only other thing I think is worth highlighting is, if you look back at the presentation we had from the rail executive shortly, about an hour ago, obviously as this progresses and and operators leave the market, the best ones leave as well as the worst ones. And so when you look at, you look at Chiltern on there, who were very well performing compared to pretty much every other operator. That's the flip side, and people should just bear that in mind as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Alden. Councillor Akhtar had indicated to speak, but I think he's
Yeah, Chair, I do. I kind of took my hand off because I thought we are pushed for a time today, but these are crucial items. I just want to know from Tom, how much subsidies is given to these private operators every year by the government?
I think if Tom can supply that information to you and all members of the committee via email, I think that's the best way of doing it.
No, Chair, I want that information to all the committee, not just to me. So people can realize that how, operators like bus operators, how they have been ripping the customers and the passengers and the taxpayer. Because all are train operators providing business services.
I made very clear it should go to you and all members of the committee. I don't think you actually heard that. It wasn't just to you. So Tom will circulate that information to you and all members of the committee.
Thank you.
Right, okay. Right, that concludes that item agenda. So we go on to item 9 and the capital performance report from Jenny. Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll take the report as read in the interest of time. But my very brief update and highlights for this report are that the committee will note that there is some commentary there. Settlement, our preparation for settlement and some like commentary around the active travel, the increase in active travel funding is used for equivalents, and that will be part of year 1 with the settlement and awards. There's also some bus funding in there, and we talked about that explicitly, but certainly the good news there in straight settlement. That will also involve some of our evaluation requirements, considering it's now being in this first year. CRSTS performance ability changes in how LA and CSWM to performing last quarter. This is one copy of the page report and the financial summary. We can read that a bit more detail. But in short, we have general increases in RAG status for performance for most local authorities. Some of them have maintained their current statuses, and in the main Coventry and Walsall are those, and WMCA and TFWM largely maintained where they were. A small improvement for Wolverhampton and schedule, and therefore a little bit of an upswing in that RAG status to Amber Green from Amber, and a little bit of downturn from Dudley and Samuel schedule, which is giving it a little bit of pressure. We're seeing a maintenance on the last despite that. We'll keep an eye on that next quarter. On risk, we have just been very specific on risk, particularly around CRSD, SDS delivery performance and timeline. The timeline now will absolutely drive decision making in the next few years. That will be a big factor in positioning the programme for successful delivery. We are also putting additional programme resources into CRSTS in the last 2 years, and that will also look at how we plan to manage CRSTS 2, how we prepare for that, and how we prepare for hopefully multi-year funding settlements that CRSTS goes into as we get evolution. We are looking for collective accountability with our STOG partners, and we're working with them on a review now that will position us for the last couple of years, or just under the last couple of years. That will solidify where we are in the programme and what we can deliver. Obviously, looking to be as realistic as possible, but it will be driven by timeline and relatively confidence in taking heavier scrutiny towards the full programme of work as an accountable authority. And there will be a requirement for us to move from what we've sort of historically done, which is retrospective reporting on status for this particular capital programme. I'm looking to turn the side on that, start looking forward. We can sort of look to the future, so that'll be in the next 12 months that we'll look to get that work done. So that will last 12 months to be deliverable for local authorities and the SWF, and so that we set ourselves up for CRSTS 2 and any multiple settlement inclusion that we anticipate we will likely get. So those are the key highlights on the report.
Okay, thank you very much for that report, Jenny. Okay, taking the report as read, I've got a question from Councillor Akhtar, Councillor Kate to start off with, and Councillor Gurdeep Singh. So Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you, Chair. I want to say to Jenny, well done. You have managed to create a single view of the whole portfolio. It is well presented. Thank you very much. And let me say, Chair, that on page 38, it says that the committee should note that Transport for West Midland and local authority partners are committed to and working towards maturing the portfolio status and working together to successfully deliver all programs within their respective funding cycles as partnership on behalf of West Midland Combined Authority. This is a heartwarming comments. Can you please, Jenny, tell me what is the pathway to green? We are on amber. What is the path to green, and what additional support do you require? And also, when do you anticipate you will get there as far as the green is concerned? That's the small request I have.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. I would say realistically, green is not somewhere we'll see again on the remainder of this kind of programme. And that's not unusual. We would expect all CAs with major high value portfolios like this to be sitting at amber until they successfully deliver, and that's not unusual. That's a cross between major complex infrastructure being delivered and the amount of risk you have to tolerate, particularly towards completion of delivery and handover, and just the amount of work that we will be looking to achieve in the last 2 years. So I don't think it would be realistic or pragmatic for me to say a green status is achievable. I think what we'd be looking for and what we are doing as a collective piece of work in STOG is looking at making sure that we have a really tight grip on this last 2 years worth of work, and that everybody is working in as integrated and efficient ways as they possibly can. And from the report, obviously, you can see that the risks that we are mitigating across the programme and where our focus will be. So that won't change. So for me, it's much more about achieving what we need to rather than getting too distracted maybe by the RAG status in particular. A very healthy place for us to be in this kind of.
Okay, start being Strategic Transport Officers Group.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Because not all members might be cognizant with the abbreviations we use. Councillor Kay and then Councillor Gurdeep Singh.
Thank you. You've addressed my query about why these schemes are green when we're talking about them and go amber as soon as spades go in the ground. But bearing in mind budget constraints, should we be reviewing these on an ongoing basis? I'm particularly thinking of a scheme on Chester Road, Solihull, where there are cycle lanes being put in on a stretch of road which already has cycle lanes in both directions, and that any improvement in traffic flow would not seem to be justified by either the amount of cost or the disruption to commuter traffic during the time that the works would take place.
I think, Councillor Kay, that is an issue that I would like to discuss with the Executive Director in terms of a deep dive by committee on projects flagging behind schedule and also in terms of value for money. So if you leave that on with us, I will have future discussions and then update the entire committee as to where we are with that one. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Where are we with the spend cost scheme to Walsall, and what is the time?
I think that's a question for Anne or Pete. Decide amongst yourselves who's going to take it.
So with Sprint Phase 2, there's a number of work packages which are out on site now. We're just in discussions with the STOG group about any mitigations to potential underspends for other projects flagging behind to see whether or not we can bring forward the work package that's in Walsall. And then also looking at the acceleration around the vehicles as well, which we know is an important component for the whole package. For Sprint as well, in terms of how we're funding those. I don't know whether you wanted to say anything, Pete, on the Sprint vehicles, but certainly in discussions with Warsaw about how we can accelerate the section that is part of that sprint phase 2.
And given that there's a scrutiny board that we are attending on Thursday, I believe, perhaps we could get some more detail so that we can update the scrutiny board of Warsaw regarding sprint phase 2 this Thursday. Okay, excellent. No other indications, so thank you all very much. I'm going on to item 10 now, which is the continuation of the bus network support plan. There is a confidential appendix. I hope we won't have to refer to it, but if we do, please indicate you are referring to it and we will go into private session. John.
Yeah, many thanks, Chair. You've just sort of taken my first sentence out of my mouth there, so just to remind members that Report 22, Appendix 1 is confidential, so please, if we need to refer to that, we'll go into the private session. We are seeking comments from you today on the recommendations that are going before the Combined Authority Board on the 14th of March in relation to the continuation of funding to support commercial local bus services from the 1st of April 2025 to the end of December 2025. Practically and procedurally, that needs to be broken down into two parts. So an extension of the existing arrangements for the whole of the month of April, and then a new scheme, details of which are in the briefing note, from the 1st of May to the end of December. That scheme and the level of funding for it has been submitted to the Subsidy Advisory Unit for review. We've had confirmation that has been accepted by them, and we will receive the outcome of that review on the 17th of April. The new scheme will require a set of binding agreements, and we are seeking the delegated approval from the board for the Exec Director of TFWM, and in consultation with the Section 73 and monitoring officers to approve those documents once we've got the once the review has been undertaken by the SAU, and also our own has also gone through our own assurance processes through the SAF process. I'd also add that the proposal is fully funded within the MTFP through various government grants that make up or are included within the integrated settlement. So, Chair, in the interest of time, I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions and comments.
Any comments? Councillor Powell.
I've got a question on the appendix, but it's only to do with a typo, and I don't think we would need to go into private session. On page 85 of the fact, there's a reference to wages and employee contributions to national insurance. It should read employer national insurance contributions, following the damaging rise we've seen this year, which is affecting both the public and private sector.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. We'll revise that. Well spotted.
Okay. So I think what you're asking us to do is to scrutinise, provide comment and endorse the contents of this report that goes before board. Are we content? Yes, we're content. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Clements.
No, I was just saying I agreed, yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, so that takes us neatly on to the next item agenda, which is, I think, Kate's swan song and the financial monitoring report, number 10. Kate.
Thank you, Chair. So the report that you have issued on Friday is the very live financial information that we had that was released concurrently with the board paper that also went out at the end of last week. That sets out the in-year financial condition of TFWM to the 31st of January 2025. For that, the revenue year-to-date position is balanced. There are a number of in-year variances arising from the metro funding, concessions and operational rail costs. Those are previously reported to you throughout the year. I'm pleased to confirm that delivery of the £2.4 million efficiency target remains on track for that. The year-end forecast position is showing a minor underspend position, but effectively all on track from a revenue perspective in there, and no kind of concerns to raise to the committee through there. As Jenny's outlined for capital performance, we have some underspend against the in-year capital budget, which then be deferred into future years. We also note the DRTS rebate exercise as well that is going on. Just to note that the indicative capital budget is within the 25-26 budget that will be going to board for approval this coming Friday. In course with kind of normal practice, we will then revise that budget once we have the year-end outcome this financial year and put a revised budget forward for approval in the summertime as we usually do. But nothing else, Chair.
Okay, I've got one minor query. 4.12, it talks about rail Camphill package 1. My understanding is that Darlaston Willenhall was package 1 and Camphill was package 2. So are we ahead on the Camphill package, or are we on package 2, or are we ahead on Willenhall and Darlaston package 1?
Thank you. It is package 2 that is ahead. So apologies, it is package 2. It is Camphill, but it is package 2. So not one Camphill.
Okay, it just proves that we do actually read the reports, as Councillor Kay has also. So I wouldn't like you to think we don't read the reports, and we hope that the West Yorkshire Greater Combined Authority councillors also read these reports with some scrutiny as ourselves. Any other questions on it? No, in which case, thank you very much.
No, Chair, you're forgetting I'm the lead member on finance.
My apologies.
Normally you ask me to make a comment and you forgot today. I hope you're not ignoring me deliberately.
No, I'm not ignoring you deliberately, but I was, for the sake of time given, but accept my apologies, Councillor Octor.
No worries, but Chair, you have to arrange these meetings properly and fix the time when people make presentations. You shouldn't pack that much agenda because these are crucial reports. Right.
These are crucial reports. Do you want to say anything, Councillor?
Yes, and that is, I want to say that power stabilization is a good achievement, will be of benefit in future years. Not using the Treasury windfall income will allow it to be used in future years. But I'm slightly concerned about concessions are down 5.7 million this year, 5 million last year. We need to investigate why concessions are not utilized. A review of patronage by route needs to be done. And I would say analyze demand levels needs to be modeled to ensure that our services are what our passengers need.
Thank you very much for those comments, Councillor Akbar. What I would say is that if you could put that in an email to me, we will take that forward as our finance make recommendation to this committee.
No, I will, Chair, forgive me, I will be discussing this with Kate, in a MAG, because we'll make a progress through there.
Okay, I will leave it up to you in your government of the next. Thank you, Councillor Akhtar.
Thank you.
Right, item 13, the noting the work programme of this committee and the board. Is that agreed? Sorry.
Agreed.
To note the MEG progress report under 12. Is that agreed?
Great.
Councillor Kay?
There is a recommendation from Passenger and Road Safety concerning the announced funding, 8 million funding for potholes in the region. A lot of local authorities will add that to their potholes budget and then remove a similar amount of funding from the existing budget and spend it on other council services. We have a recommendation that TDOS ask the combined authority to monitor how local authorities are spending that money. Thank you.
Are we content with that recommendation? Yes, agreed. Okay, so the government officers could note that. That's all good. I think I know what you're going to say.
Thank you. I think it's perhaps, since we're discussing the money, the government for potholes, did we also know that Birmingham didn't get any?
So we're not quite the centre of the universe, as Councillor Nicholas has.
Chair, point of information, as you and Councillor Alden both well know, we have a PFI arrangement in Birmingham, which means we're outside, this funding. This point came up at the council meeting last week. Tim and I had a chat about it. And at the moment, we're waiting to see, what happens now, because we had to take the previous government to a judicial review because it decided to cancel our PFI agreement. So I think the reasons why we're outside this funding are well known to the Birmingham councillors in the room. Thank you.
But of course, if the government do go ahead with the cancellation of the PFI, then I think there needs to be a reconsideration of the pothole repair fund as part of the normal arrangements. But I think we are moving away from the substantive item, which is to note and agree the recommendations of the NEC. So is that agreed?
I agree.
Great. Excellent. Councillor Ward.
There is in fact a recommendation for the air quality, congestion and environmental impact made. We had a presentation at the last meeting on the talking traffic system. What we were told was that the government was intending to fund a pilot, or as it's described in this paragraph, a demonstration platform of this in the West Midlands, but that the government's funding was withdrawn. So the MEG would like to make a recommendation to this committee to urge TfWM and the combined authority to find another funding route in order that this pilot or demonstration platform can actually be carried out.
Are we content and agree to that recommendation? Agreed. Okay, I will bring action. Thank you.
Can it be noted in the MEG that I chair, the recommendation has been deferred to the meeting on May the 6th.
We will note that. Thank you, Councillor Nicholas. Okay, thank you for everyone's comments on item 12. I was ahead of myself, I am sorry. Item 13, the work programme, for noting, can we note it? Okay, item 14. Just get my agenda. Item 14 and 15 are irrelevant because we dealt with them, and item 16 is that the next meeting is on Tuesday, the 6th of May at 11 o'clock. Great. Thank you all very much, and thank you for attending. And don't forget the briefing starts at 1:30, so please have your lunch and any comfort break promptly and be back in here for 1:30. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. Bye.
Thank you, Liz.
Position parties on Solihull have been quite so set it, thanks to the board and everything.
I mean, I can agree with that.
People more interested in making statements.
Yeah. Listen, that's it. I think that's all. Whatever side of the problem, all needs to be.
And now they're going to.
Makes sense. Okay, so.
Do you know? I'm not sure.
Can I get an invite? Oh dear. I know the people because my car's not that.
Yeah, I'm more concerned, you know what it was? So what happened?
Well, I've asked for the 7th. Have you already asked? That's the each time you turn. Have a shower. Yeah, you don't want to hear that. Do you know what I mean? It's so yeah.
I've been chatting to Chris.
Sure.
And I
Should in theory, asked, but what I haven't done is just wanted to make sure what we do. Yeah, there are still will do it. Yeah. So if you're sitting there, you want to be. I just want to see that's the only thing. Some various reasons. There is some logic to it. Yeah, not a. I'm not. Any other Fridays?
Might want to go on this visit.
Yeah, have a little dig, didn't you?
It's kind of, I was.
You might have got 5 minutes, Councillor Sherwood.
Do you want to? Okay. That's
I
fine.
don't worry, Councillor Sherwood, that's great.
I did think.
No presentations go on.
Yeah.
If you don't.
Yeah, so you just, there's 2 people there.
We don't need to know that granular detail about 172s and 196s, and she lost the committee completely.
Yeah.
And switch off. Yes, and she wasn't here to see people switching off because she was doing it online. So if we could. I don't know who employs her, whether it's the CA or the WMRE. But actually, no, she needs to know some people because it's the lead trustee. The knock-on effect on the rest of the committee.
To be shared with Gordon at the end to say, just have a quick sprint through. Don't say anything.
No. Yeah.
I shouldn't want to say something.
The agenda is so busy with you. The presentation, so you always ask.
Yeah.
Shared beforehand.
Yes.
Do you want to do it on the day?
Whenever make sure that next day or so.
But I wasn't expecting it that long about granular detail.
See you. Bye.
I'll see you.
Yes, I think appropriately.
The lady.
Your charge.
Yeah. Did anybody else say that, that they wanted to come and visit?
They were checking diaries.
Because it's not one I've organised, it's one that's been organised by the officer who services the relevant men. But when I spoke to him today, he said that when I spoke with him, there'd only been one councillor taking it up, although since
Which councillor?
you councillor.
Oh, what a day.
Councillor Alden had assumed he was going because he was the chair, but he hadn't got as far as telling the officer that he was making an assumption. So there are spaces for a few, but I said that I knew Lindsay had messaged me to let me know at the PDOS. So I said I'd established what offer had been made and who'd taken it up before I went back. So